have to care about every type of question on this exam. So let's talk about the existing scoring for the current version. Quant is scored from 6 to 51. All right. And this is not a raw score. There is some magic that happens where they take the number of questions you got right, the difficulty of those questions, and then it translates into the score from 6 to 51. All right. Then we have verbal. Same deal, 6 to 51. Right? So they have the same scoring between those two sections. I'll note that the actual scores don't compare super well. There are different percentiles associated with different numbers, different section scores, but they have the same scale. There's IR, which was scored from 1 to 8, and there's AWA, which is scored from 0 to 6. All right. Now, the total score on the GMAT is 200 to 800, and that score is composed of your quant and your verbal scores. So IR scored separately, AWA scored separately, which, as I was talking about earlier, means that particularly we emphasize quant and verbal in our studies because those contribute to your total score. IR and AWA less so. We're mostly hoping to just do okay on those sections, well enough to not raise any flags. And if you're taking the current version, that advice stands. But if you're taking the Focus Edition, things change a little bit. All right, new scoring. Quant is going to be scored from 60 to 90. All right, and again, this has not been officially announced for sure. It's just from those screen grabs from the official guide. So it could change, but I doubt it. All right, quant scored from 60 to 90. Verbal also scored from 60 to 90. All right, so same scale, just like currently, but we don't know, again, how those scales compare. The percentiles could be very different across those two sections. So an 80 might be super high on verbal, but maybe only the 75th percentile on quant. We don't know that yet, but the same section scoring. And then data insights is also scored from 60 to 90. So now we're seeing, okay, data insights is different than IR. And the IR was its own thing. Data insights is now being put on the same level as quant and verbal. They have the same scoring across each exam. And that is reflected in the total score. Now, very strange. The total score is now 205 to 805. Not really sure what that's about. Maybe just to distinguish from the old score. I don't know. Maybe there's more logic to it. It goes in 10-point increments. So you might have a 795 or a 685. All right. And that score is composed of quant, verbal, and data insights. All right. So it's composed of all three of those sections. Now, we don't know for sure yet whether they're contributing equally to the score. I would guess yes, that just like quant and verbal currently contribute equally to that total score, I would guess that all three of these new sections are contributing equally to that total score. That's not confirmed yet. All right. So check back, but that would be my guess based on the fact that they all have the same section scoring. Okay, so what does that mean for us? What are the takeaways here? Takeaway number 1, every section matters now. All right, so again, advice for the current version is not fully ignore IR and AWA, but don't give them nearly as much attention as quant and verbal, because again, they don't contribute to that total score. Now, all of the sections go toward that total score, probably equally. So every section matters now. You have to care about those 4 IR question types. They matter at this point. So every section matters now. You have to care about each one. But still unknown how scores, section scores, total scores correlate with percentiles. So we don't know that a 55 isn't a real score. A 70 on one section correlates to a 70 on the other section, correlates to a 70 on the other section. We don't know that yet. We also don't know how they roll up into that total score. All right, so there are still a lot of unknowns about scoring here, but the big takeaway here is that you have to care about each section. Once we have practice tests, we can start paying attention to percentiles and things like that. But for now, just know you have to care about every type of question on this exam. Now, I'll also share that there are some other little things that have changed. So for instance, the current version, you can purchase an enhanced score report, which basically gives you more information about how you performed on your test, how you performed over time, how long were you spending per question, how did you perform on questions of different difficulty, how did you perform on questions of different content types, but it costs extra money, right? On the Focus Edition, what they're instead doing is saying, okay, there's no enhanced score report. For every person that takes the test, we will give you better reporting. So you will get more analysis coming out of your test. That's really cool, in my opinion. I love the enhanced score report. I think it provides a lot of value if you are retaking, which I highly recommend because it tells you a lot about yourself. I know I learned a lot about myself when I looked at my enhanced score report. I learned that I was spending more time on the questions I got wrong than on the questions I got right. Yikes. All right. So that's a takeaway, right? So this is valuable. Does it impact how you're going to study? No, other than that you might get more value out of a retake, but that is a change. And there are likely some other little things here. And again, there are some things that are still coming out, being revealed. But big takeaways, those are the changes to worry about.